Section 4.5 is choosing the correct inferential procedure 1.0. This is the first of many sections that will be titled choosing the correct inferential procedure, and we'll get to 2.0 and so forth. The idea here is that one of the hardest things to do in this course, as we develop more and more inferential procedures, that is more and more ways to solve problems, is to look at a problem and figure out, how should I approach solving this? Which procedure is the right procedure to answer this question? Right now, we only have two possible answers. So in this section, what we're doing is not too bad in the sense that we have limited options, but it's important to start doing this early, because even though we only have two options, if at this point we can understand what types of questions each of these procedures can answer, then as we add more procedures, we don't have to start from scratch. We will have a general understanding of what we already know how to do, and we're just slowly adding to our list. So if we look at two questions that we know how to answer about the same thing, the first question is, let's suppose that we know that some years ago, maybe a few years ago, we did some study and it was understood that the average student loan debt was about $30,000. One question we could ask is, well, is the average student loan debt for graduating seniors still $30,000? This is a question that we would answer with a hypothesis test. And as I said, right now we only have one hypothesis test, really. It's a hypothesis test for a population mean. We have two variations on it, but in some senses, they're very similar. And why is it a hypothesis test? It's a hypothesis test because this is a yes-no question. And of course, not all yes-no questions can be answered with a hypothesis test, but generally speaking, that if you have a statistical question that's a yes-no question, a hypothesis test is the right approach. This second question, what is the average student loan debt for graduating seniors? Similar question, right? It's asking about the same stuff. This is the type of question that we would answer with a confidence interval. And the reason this is something we would answer with a confidence interval is it's a question with a numerical answer. And again, not all numerical questions are answerable with confidence intervals, but if it's a statistical question, a question about a population that we're trying to answer with a sample, a confidence interval is going to be the appropriate way to address a question with a numerical answer. And so in this section, one of the biggest goals is to get some early on practice in identifying between these two types of things. Look at a question that you're being asked and decide whether you should do a hypothesis test or a confidence interval. In addition, one thing that we'll try to do in this section is simply get practice doing this, right? So once we determine, okay, this is a hypothesis test, we'll get more practice working with hypothesis tests or confidence intervals, if that's what the appropriate approach is. So keep that in mind. Two goals: identify the procedure and then also practice the appropriate procedure.